Demurrage. Demurrage? Demurrage? It's sometimes hard to say. But what is demurrage anyways? Hi, welcome to By Land and by Sea, an attorney breaking down the week in supply chain. I'm Lauren Beagen, founder of Squall Strategies, a maritime legal consulting company, and I'm your favorite maritime industry host. Join me every week as we walk through both ocean transport and surface transport topics in the wild world of supply chain. As always, the guidance here is general and for educational purposes only. It should not be construed to be legal advice, and there is no attorney-client privilege created by this video. If you need an attorney, contact an attorney. So before we get into the discussion of demurrage, let's go through my top 3 stories of the week. Number 1, the Federal Maritime Commission, the FMC's, Advance Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, ANPRM, is still open. Gosh, that's a lot of alphabet soup, huh? I covered this in a previous By Land and by Sea episode, and I've actually covered it many times in many different iterations on my LinkedIn page. But there's one notable item here. As I've mentioned, the comments are generally public and listed on the 22-04 docket on the FMC's e-reading room. You can click it. It's right on the website. Just navigate over to 22-04 docket. So just this week, a whole slew of trade associations actually banded together to request a 30-day additional comment filing period from the FMC on this detention and demurrage D&D ANPRM. Like I said, the alphabet soup here. It's great. It's great. So detention and demurrage, advance notice proposal rulemaking. These trade industries banded together and are asking for an extension. Will the FMC grant it? I don't know. We'll see. They certainly have the authority to extend the comment filing period. And honestly, I probably wouldn't be surprised if they do. They have made it very clear that they want to hear from the public on this one. So, they want that public industry input. And they've been hitting the pavement to get it done. The chairman and the commissioners are hosting a slew of meetings and traveling all over the country, really to connect with so many different sectors of the supply chain industry. I mean, the last thing they'd want to do is lose the feedback because of an administrative procedural limitation of a closing date on the comment period. However, just because they can doesn't mean they will. So what if they don't extend the comment filing period? Well, you can still submit your comments late, but they may or may not be accepted. The FMC is allowed to accept late filed comments, but it's in their discretion. The short advice, again, not legal advice, just general advice. Get your comments in whatever way you can by March 17th. If you do need more time, keep working and maybe submit a short form comments by March 17th and just say, bigger comment submission is forthcoming. We'll call it your Cliff Notes version. As I said, the March 17th date might stick here. I'm hopeful that it doesn't, but it might stick. So I have a feeling that with that many trade associations requesting the additional 30 days, I don't know. That's why I think that they might extend it. But we'll see. I mean, the list was lengthy, you guys. We had everybody from NITLE, the National Industrial Transportation League, to my friends out at Harbor Trucking Association on the West Coast. We had the Can Manufacturers Institute, think aluminum cans, to Leather and Hide Council of America, to Meat Import Council of America, to the Home Furnishings Association. We had Sports and Fitness Industry Association. Shoot, even the Halloween Industry Association got in on this letter. I'm telling you, it was a lengthy list. You can see the whole list on my recent LinkedIn post, or you can visit the FMC's 22-04 docket to see the filed comment from March 8th. I couldn't actually list, it's such a long list. I couldn't actually even list all of it in the description of my LinkedIn post. I had to put it down in the comments, and I couldn't even put all the list in the comments. I had to put it in 2 comments. Stay tuned on this. I'm going to keep watching this. This is pretty interesting. I hope that they extend the comment filing period, but we'll see, like I said. So the number 2 story of the week, Congress sent some letters to some major ocean carriers. Congress can pretty much do what they want here. But to me, this seems like FMC territory, right? But I guess Congress can dive in on this too. I'm just not sure how much information they'll actually receive because remember, these are foreign carriers. The FMC has some hooks on why they're able to get this information from these foreign carriers otherwise. But the U.S. Congress, I don't know. We'll see. Look, the huge profits that these carriers are enjoying right now, especially, this year, last year, was at least part due to market driven reasons. People were willing to pay these exorbitant rates. Sure, their actual costs may not have risen that much. And I think that that's partly why people are, well, I mean, of a few different reasons, but that's one of the sticking points here. But do you need to have your operational costs actually rise to increase your prices? Isn't that Econ 101, raising prices with demand increases? I don't know. We're going to have to watch this one here and see what happens. Maybe I'll end up doing an episode on this. The one thing that could come from this, though, is so last week there was a Senate hearing, and the Federal Maritime Commission Chair Dan Maffei in front of Senate. Congress was clearly showing that they were frustrated by the ocean carriers making such high profits. And so last week at the Senate hearing, Chairman Dan Maffei said that the FMC doesn't actually have emergency powers. Perhaps that's something to consider in the Ocean Shipping Reform Act, OSRA, that we keep hearing about. It previously passed the House, and now they're reviewing it in the Senate. I was pretty encouraged by some of the questions from the Senate. I really want to make sure that OSRA has some real kind of evergreenness to it, and a little less reactionary. But emergency powers coming to the FMC, maybe that's a great thing. So we'll see. So the number 3 story of the week, man, these lengthy explanations on these stories. So the number 3 story of the week, the FMC and the DOJ's Memorandum of Understanding. So Department of Justice Memorandum of Understanding. We talked about this last week, but I wanted to bring it up again. It's important to know that this isn't necessarily going to create this super investigator that's going to be, hungry to go get the bad guys. And I say that kind of in a way that they're not going to be overly investigatory. I don't know. Look, the FMC only has less than 120 employees. And if they're going to pursue billion-dollar companies, as we're seeing in these ocean carriers, and other companies, they're going to need the additional manpower. And so I kind of imagine it like a carpool. You're driving the car, but you need extra people to help you qualify for the HOV lane. But these people aren't driving your car. You're still driving your car. They're just the passengers helping you achieve the goal of being in the HOV lane. Sure, they might make suggestions on routes and speed and, etc. They're likely drivers themselves, which, they are antitrust experts as well. But you're still the one driving the car, dang it. And that's kind of what Chairman Maffei last week was saying, that over my dead body, are we going to become anything other than an independent regulatory agency? So, that's what's happening here. The FMC needs the extra people to help stand up these large investigations if they're going to be going after some of these bad guys. And not suggesting necessarily that the ocean carriers are bad guys, but any bad guys out there. But they're still driving the car. The FMC is still driving the car, though. I'm not afraid of the FMC any more than I previously was. They just have more manpower here. And look, if you're not a bad guy engaging in price gouging and predatory detention and demurrage practices, if you keep your business compliant and in the spirit of the free and efficient movement of goods, you're in a good spot. I guess not legal advice, general advice. Don't be a bad guy. If you want to hear more about this, I actually chatted with Sal Mercogliano about this on his YouTube show, What the Ship. The video actually just dropped today. Go check it out. We dive into it for about 45 minutes and, this and related FMC topics, but certainly the DOJ FMC Memorandum of Understanding. So it'll be linked in the comments of the video below. Go check it out. And I just wanted to kind of notice the day. So, special note, it was 2 years ago today. It was actually Friday the 13th that Boston shut down for COVID-19 reasons. I think the emergency order was signed maybe a day or two prior to this Friday the 13th, 2 years ago in 2020. But it feels like we've come full circle, and I'm cautiously optimistic about where we go next. And I only bring this up because one question that keeps coming up when we talk about all the supply chain is, when will the congestion on the West Coast find relief? We're starting to see some alleviation there, but one answer that I would give on this is when the excess goods spending turns back towards services spending. We were spending a lot of money on stuff. And now I think we're going to be spending a little bit more money on experiences because we're less sitting in our homes and we're feeling more comfortable getting out of our homes and going and engaging again. And so what is that? Traveling, that's dining out, that's activities. So on this 2-year anniversary of that Friday the 13th, 2020, I have to believe that we're getting there. Believe me though, there are a few huge hurdles that are in 2022. Um, they're going to be, I mean, they're going to be known and unknown, certainly. The ILWU labor contract, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest hurdles of 2022. And, not to mention some of the more recent things that have been happening on the global scale. But we're getting there. We're getting there. Let's focus on the positives. Look for the news coverage to start escalating on those contract negotiations. Come early, mid-June. The contract actually expires the end of June. I hope it's not, but it could get messy. But let's watch. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the day. So what is detention and demurrage? We often hear them together, detention and demurrage. I mean, they're both essentially the fee to get your stuff moving. It's like a little rental fee. You have a few days of, yeah, that's fine, you can leave it here. And then it becomes, dude, move your stuff. You can't just leave it here forever. So let's break down demurrage. When a container comes in off a ship and gets offloaded onto the yard, you're given a certain number of free days. It makes sense. The terminal report received your container, and you don't have to drop everything and get there that same very day. Usually it's a week, maybe 10 days or more, free days. And they're just that, free. You hear that the container is off the ship. And actually, here's a special note. There's a problem here. Wouldn't it be nice if it was that precise? If we could actually know the moment that the box dropped off the ship, maybe even the day. In our current system, sometimes we don't actually even know if the box is off the ship or not. And then even if it is off the ship, it gets further complicated on the ocean shipment side of whether or not the container is even ready to be picked up. So, I mean, for all these reasons, there's some buffer days being built in here. And that's what those free days are, these buffer days. It's a balance between the yard or terminal being able to get the container to be picked up by the drayage trucker or the cargo owner, the BCO, the beneficial cargo owner, arranging for the movement of that cargo. And those first few free days, then the yard terminal box owner needs to start nudging after those first free days. Like, get her moving, guys. So that's when they impose a fee. It's a small fee at first. So maybe the first few days, like 5 days after your initial free days, is like $100 or something, $100 or less. Remember, you've had about a week or so of free time at this point, and now you're getting a small nudge for about another week. So really, you're at like 1 week of free time, 1 week to 10 days, and another week of, all right, you really got to get moving. I got to start charging you. You've been taking up the spot for too long. And, the longer the goods stay on the yard, the more expensive that nudge becomes, the more expensive your rent to take up that space is. So what's the problem? There's a few problems here. There's no clear oversight of this process. So the FMC does regulate this, but, when there aren't really clear rules on how to bill or even timelines for when to bill, you really open up the industry for bad actors to be coming in. So, I mean, can you imagine if you had a demurrage charge show up as an invoice a year after the demurrage actually occurred? A year. Imagine if you were charged for your groceries a year after you bought them. The groceries are likely all consumed, and any receipts you had are iffy at best. I mean, you could probably pull your credit card receipts and maybe contact the grocery store for the itemized list of goods purchased. I mean, you get to a year later, it's a problem for any transaction. And demurrage charges for goods sitting too long on the yard is certainly no exception. So there's also the problem of heavy charges edge you into abandoned cargo territory. Sometimes the demurrage charges can pile up so heavily that the charges to release the container are exponentially more than what the cargo is actually worth. Imagine your goods have been sitting for a month. Maybe they're in a refrigerated cargo box, and for some reason, maybe licensing, import problems, trade changes between countries, or import problems for the for importing from this specific country, some sort of troubles arise for the company. Now imagine if those goods were fish and this were in a reefer cargo box. Perishable fish products. I mean, a month is a long time. But it's been frozen in this climate controlled box, refrigerated cargo box. So really, it's okay. But the demurrage charges have been piling up while the company has been trying to deal with the troubles associated with releasing the box. Guys, you're looking at the company potentially abandoning perishable fish because it costs way more in fees than the contents of the box are worth. No good. We'll talk about this later, but this is one reason why a dispute resolution mechanism is so important. Who can the company call to try and get a reduction on the demurrage charge? Remember, this is an incentivization of movement fee, so it's not a profit line. And like I said, there aren't a lot of parameters around this, so you're not required to necessarily say who to call if you have a problem. You know, with this incentivization fee, no company should be relying on this as a profit line that they can, you know, build into their P&L statement. It's supposed to be found money and should be treated as such. Maybe the yard can reduce the demurrage charge by half, but if there isn't a person to call or a procedure for doing that, then it will just be a waste of time trying to figure out the how. Meanwhile, remember, frozen fish are at stake here in this hypothetical. So why do these charges pile up? Well, like I said, sometimes there's a hold on the container. It might be a government hold, it might be a paperwork discrepancy, outstanding charges unrelated to demurrage, and this is where the problems start to come in. So while your cargo is sitting on the yard, 1 week, 2 weeks, a month, it's starting to build up some hefty charges. That's demurrage. And detention is essentially the same thing, but it's the rent for the container, not the space it takes up on the yard. So what's the problem? We've talked about a few already, and there's some controversy over how the demurrage is assessed. I mean, sometimes it's passed through a few different billing mechanisms or companies before it gets to the end client. And each time there may have been administrative fees added. Maybe the port assesses the fee, but then that goes to the ocean carrier, and then there's an administrative fee added on. And so by the time it gets to the person paying for the release of the cargo, what may have been initially a fairly reasonable daily fee now has administrative fees tacked on, and it's a crazy amount for just a few days on the yard past your free time. Remember, this is a per diem. Remember, per diem means daily. This is a daily charge, and you're entering into abandoned cargo territories if the fees go too high. And I've talked about this before, but the FMC, in their detention and demurrage advance notice of proposed rulemaking, their open rulemaking right now, doesn't care if you call it per diem or demurrage, whatever it is. They're focusing on the activity, not necessarily getting into the semantics of the name. So whether it's surcharge over per diem or demurrage, that's what they're looking at here. I can't say this enough. Demurrage is in place to be a catalyst to get cargo off the yard. Keep her moving. The longer the cargo sits on the yard, the less space the yard has for the next box. And then that slips into congestion. And as we know, once that dam breaks, and once it starts to break toward congestion, it can be a heck of a time digging out. We've all found that out over the past 2 years. But also going back to even the forecasting of this, the Federal Maritime Commission in 2015 started to realize that we were getting into high levels of cargo movement. And so we needed to amend some of the processes that we had in place for the supply chain. That was in 2015. They certainly didn't see the pandemic coming, but they saw the writing on the wall that congestion was only going to keep building. So who's doing what? The Federal Maritime Commission is the federal regulatory agency responsible for overseeing demurrage. We talked about this before. They're an independent regulatory agency, so they don't really answer to anybody other than the American people, really, but they're an independent regulatory agency. They've put out some guidance on the matter saying that there needs to be a reasonableness to demurrage, and they've started a rulemaking that we've talked about on this show, earlier today. I'm going to put links to the content that I've covered on this ANPRM, this rulemaking, in the notes here. In general, I tend to advise clients, whether it's ports or terminals or whoever, that they need to be reviewing their demurrage charges. Are they reasonable? Are they defensible? Meaning, if you're asked to explain how they're assessed and why they're assessed, could you say it's because of the incentivization of the movement of cargo? And it helps maintain the free flow of cargo off the yard. You might see a profit line from this. You probably will. But it needs to really be found money, not necessarily budgeted or expected profit. So once you expect it as a line item, rather than money that offsets your burden of the cargo on your yard, you might be entering into questionable territory. So there you have it. A quick breakdown of demurrage. It's a hot topic right now for sure, and it's going to remain a hot topic in the supply chain for a while. I mean, really until there's some guardrails instituted by the FMC. You know, I really like the 60 or even 30-day invoicing requirements suggested by the FMC's rulemaking. I'd love to see some expediency to the demurrage charge invoicing so that it can be checked, even disputed if needed. I can't say it enough. This is found money that is supposed to be assessed for the movement of goods. The FMC has said that very clearly recently. Demurrage is a catalyst for the movement of goods. I'll say that again. Demurrage is a catalyst for the movement of goods. So if the goods move, then the problem is solved. And if you can cover your costs of your operational costs, maybe the hassle of having this cargo linger on your yard, then really that's what the demurrage should be covering. It's not a profit line, or really it's not supposed to be. So do you have any questions about any of this? Contact me at Squall Strategies. This is Lauren Beagen. Again, the guidance here is general and for educational purposes only. It should not be construed to be legal advice directly related to your matter. If you need an attorney, contact an attorney. If you like these videos, let me know. Comment, like, and share. These videos actually now live on my YouTube channel, By Land and by Sea. Feel free to check out the old videos and make sure to subscribe so that you can be alerted when we go live and when the new videos are posted. So until next week, this is Lauren Beagen, and you've just listened to By Land and by Sea. See you next time.